All right. Hello, clean techers. I am Mike Casey, and I'm the founder of Tigercomm, the national clean economy marcom and public affairs firm. I've got the honor today of convening a group of clean tech's leading podcast hosts for our second roundtable. This idea is inspired by our quarterly Clean Tech Editors Roundtable series. It's grown increasingly popular during the pandemic, and as it progressed, we kept hearing from people who want to hear from the podcasters, because while the full-time editors have a breadth of view, the people here have a depth of view because their shows delve deep into companies, leaders, and trends. And I'm going to have the panelists introduce themselves in alphabetical order by last name, then go right to a few questions. I'm certain we are going to hear from each of our guests because as podcasters, they are not shy about jumping into the conversation. But please do send us your questions and post them. If we do not get to your questions, I will do my level best to make sure we get answers from some of them and get with you afterward. All right, Marie, I think you're first in the alphabet. Let's start with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike, and everybody. Thank you so much for being here. So excited that we're doing this again. I am Marie Bergquist with the GRNE Solar sponsored podcast, What's Up? What's Up? What's Up focuses on all things renewable energy and sustainability.
Mr. Johnson.
My name is Nico Johnson, host of the ever popular, now 400 episodes deep, SunCast. And I also run a company called SunCast Media, right there. And I occasionally get to have fun with all of these folks, including Mr. Mike Casey. Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely. Mr. Montague.
Hey there, good to be here. Tim Montague with the Clean Power Hour. I co-host a weekly news roundup and interview show with my colleague, John Weaver, who's a journalist with PV Magazine. And we've started to mix it up with some interviews with inventors and founders. So looking forward to bringing you more of that. Great to be here.
Mr. Nussey, who has, I think, an announcement of an upcoming piece of intellectual content.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for having me, man. This is fun to be back. Bill Nussey, host of the Freeing Energy podcast. We are focused on local energy, which is the small scale rooftop solar, community solar, CNI, and we want to see that happen much sooner. So we have guests who come on who are experts in the field of policy, technology, and we really love entrepreneurs. So this is primarily about entrepreneurs. And there's a book coming out that I've been working on for a few years, born out of a TED Talk I did a while back, that's called Freeing Energy as well. And it's kind of the entrepreneur's on-ramp for clean energy for folks that want to get in this industry.
Mr. Porter, aloha.
Hey, aloha, folks. Josh Porter here in Maui with Solar Coaster Radio Show, media company. We are focused on all things new energy economy and love learning about new inventions and new technologies. Right here is our teaser from our recent 60-day, 6,000-mile cross-country film project with North America Smart Energy Week in a partnership. And yeah, I was looking forward to talking with everybody here and having a good time today.
We are welcoming for the first time Mr. Powers.
Hey, thanks, Mike, and thanks, Nico, for hosting. John Powers, I'm the president and co-founder of Clean Capital. I have the honor of serving as President Obama's chief sustainability officer and have been in the sort of sustainability and climate change space for a while. I launched Experts Only as a podcast really to explore solutions to climate change, really focusing on discussing with industry leaders the intersection of energy, innovation, and finance. So we really go in deep with innovators, with venture capitalists, with others to see where the market's going and really help drive solutions that we think are so critical to the crisis we face today.
And last but certainly not least, Ms. Piper.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. So I am Julia Piper. I am officially Vice President of Communications and Policy at GoodLeap, one of the residential solar financiers. But I'm also host of Political Climate, and I'll speak in that capacity today. Political Climate is a podcast that tackles the energy and environmental policies and politics of the day. My co-hosts are Brandon Hurlbut, former Chief of Staff at the DOE, and Shane Skelton, who is a former Hill staffer. And we sort of evolved the show. We took a little bit of a break earlier this year. Politics, I think we can all remember what January was like. It really felt like things were stalled. But it's really evolved, and I'm excited to say we relaunched just earlier this month. We had Senator Henrik on the show recently, and it's a good look at the ins and outs of how things are moving on Capitol Hill and DC more broadly.
And folks, an administrative point, you'll note that we brought back our background competition, and you can clearly see that there are two people who are trying to crash the boards with changing backgrounds. And so the public is going to have to vote with their feet whether or not we like the static background, yours truly, Julia, Nico, Tim, or do we like these show-offs, Marie Bergquist and Josh Porter. So people have to vote with their feet, but I need to hear from you. All right.
I'm going to bring in my solar-powered pollinators here. Solar pollinator Legos.
I want one of those.
That's cool.
Really cool.
My background's not moving, but it's cool.
Mine's meant to be social commentary on the fact that we need more distributed energy solutions in places like New Orleans, where we saw the power outages.
You take it. Do not believe a White House operative like John Powers. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was going to bring the Lego background in and he was going to try to ace, jump over Josh Porter. Right. Let's just be clear. So I'm just
Mike, you're giving me too much credit. I literally put on a collared shirt as I was walking in and set my mic up. So
I've just been watching. I've just been watching all these guys. It's crazy what's happening out there. It's unbelievable.
Okay. All right. First question, folks. Since we last spoke in July, what are the three biggest clean tech trends that you see emerging from the summer going into the fall? Bill Nussey, Mr. Book author, you get to lead us off.
Well, Julia stole my thunder, but I think the fallout from Hurricane Ida is difficult to overstate. It's one more demonstration that we need more decentralized generation. I call it local energy. I think of it as sort of Mother Nature grabbing us by the throat, saying, "Listen, aren't you guys getting it? We really need to change the way we generate power." So that's number one. Trying to be a little outside the box here. Number two, I think we're going to have a battle coming in the next few months about what actually constitutes clean energy. Does it include nuclear? And this is, I think, has entirely new levels of importance as the folks in Washington, D.C. figure out what clean energy means for these new bills. Does it mean natural gas? So, and I think the last one that I'm personally very excited about was when Secretary Granholm got behind one of my favorite new things, the Solar App Plus. It's not ground shaking in clean energy, but to me, it's a tectonic shift, getting that level of attention on something that's going to accelerate local energy to that degree.
All right, Julia Piper, your big three coming out of this summer, extending in the fall. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I obviously echo Bill in the local energy and the need for more of it. We saw in the wake of the Hurricane Ida, it was weeks with people without power. With 80% of the city still out, there were 14 deaths I just looked up that were attributed, I believe, to power outages. So really dire, and I think it just shows the consequences of our decisions there. But also note that FEMA came out with a report that showed in the Texas power outage that solar was truly a reliable resource. And so I think we're really going to see the conversation evolve around reliability and clean resources of all kinds. Another trend is every month this year, I believe, so January, February, beyond, EV sales were up month over month throughout the year. So despite the turbulence in the markets and things we're seeing amid the pandemic that's ongoing, EV sales are having a record year. So that's an exciting trend to watch for. The other one I'll quickly point to is I came across Energy Sprong, which is out of the Netherlands. It's a retrofit program to make homes net zero energy. So they generate a total amount of their energy required for their heating, hot water, and electrical, all within the home itself. So this is a new trend on the radar. We'll see if it has any legs here in North America, but I thought that was an exciting one to see come on the scene, and just innovations around the home in general are a space to watch, I think.
All right, Josh Porter, fresh off your cross-country mainland trip.
All right. Yeah. Well, I can tell you about what I think is interesting and what's happening out there that kind of excites me. So long duration storage, we just came off a show with KIU's president, David Bissell. They're implementing with AES out there a long duration storage PSH pumped storage hydro system that'll take Kauai from 70-80% kind of 24-hour renewables to almost 80-90%. So when we look at long duration storage, I think it's really fascinating. I think we're going to see more of that. I mean, that project is green lit, funded, ready to go. Pairing hydrogen with renewable energy resources like Washington, PUD, Douglas Utility. They're actually implementing right now a 5 megawatt Cummings electrolyzer, and it's a green hydrogen system. So it's fascinating. But what's going to happen with how are the feds going to define clean hydrogen? What's the carbon character of that? I think this is a really fascinating area. I'm excited about Plug Power in Alabama and the hydro facility up there in Niagara. And yeah, what's the third one? Let's say adapting to climate change. I mean, we kind of understand that climate change is happening. Look at what we just went through with NOLA. And so I'm talking to companies out there that are looking at dual use of land, agrivoltaics, vertical bifacials, things of that nature, and actually creating up kind of solutions for farmers and for soil integrity and things like that. These are areas that fascinate me that I think are up and coming.
Tim Montague.
Oh, thanks, Mike. It's so hard to name just three things, but I want to shine a light on the solar industry for a moment, because what is happening is that we have realized that the United States is going to install 1 terawatt of solar by 2035. And then we're going to go to 3 terawatts by 2050. So solar PV, if you're not aware of what's going on in the solar PV industry, you need to sit up and listen hard, because this is a cash cow for our country and for the safety and future of society. We're looking at going 45% solar on the grid by 2050. My favorite new technology, and it's so weird how these things happen and just emerge kind of like a tipping point, an ice cube melting, is direct air capture. Last time we got together as a group, I was shining a light on green hydrogen, and that's still something I'm very excited about, because Earth is the water planet, and you can make hydrogen from water, and we have 10,000 times more solar energy, right, than we can use. So we're swimming in energy, which means we're swimming in green hydrogen if we want to be. But the Orca project in Iceland by Incline, which is a Swiss company, was all over the news a couple of weeks ago. This is still small scale stuff, right? And we need to scale it to, thousands of gigatons a year of carbon capture. But when you think about the built environment, it's all made of carbon that was sucked out of the atmosphere by plants and animals, right? It is all around us, and it is proven technology. Evolution has proved it for us, even though, unfortunately, CO2 is only, well, fortunately or unfortunately, CO2 is 0.04% of the atmosphere. So getting that stuff out of the atmosphere is hard work, and it takes a lot of energy, but we're now getting serious about it. And in that regard, I also want to highlight the X Prize that Elon Musk is giving $100 million, right, for a next generation direct air capture technology. That's real money. And he is still the shining star for clean tech. And I'll shut up now. Thank you so much.
All right, let's do John, then Nico, then Marie for the close on this question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think so the three trends. First of all, Tim, you mentioned tipping points. I think overall we've reached a cultural tipping point around climate change. Now we're seeing businesses and federal action beginning to move again in this direction. I think one of the biggest trends for me is federal action. It's back to the table. For the last 4 years, there was no federal action. Now you're seeing dramatic pushes by this administration with an all-of-government approach. And what does that mean? It means you actually have climate advisors working for the Secretary of Treasury and the Secretary of Defense in their front offices. That just didn't exist before. That is really driving tremendous change. It'll be slow. They're getting the beast going again. But once it gets going, I think we're going to see some exciting stuff leading up, not just the climate negotiations coming up, but really true action to get us, as Tim mentioned, the 45% by 2050 goal. The second one is the capital flowing into this market is unmatched to where it's ever been. ESG investing overall is quarter by quarter breaking records. So we're seeing more and more dollars looking for projects. That's exciting. It's also challenging because oftentimes these new investors don't understand things like net metering, right? So developers get stuck trying to do deals with people that don't actually understand the market. And then the third one, I think we can't overlook the challenges of the supply chain ramp, especially from the summer to fall. There is a huge constraint on projects. Things like our pricing is going to go back up because of things like EPC pricing, panel pricing. And if things like the direct pay pass in Congress, which are super exciting and game changing for us, if we have to have domestic content in there, where is that coming from? Like, how do we get our supply chain ramped back up here at home to meet the demand that's out there? Because the demand is there. We just have to make sure the supply is ready.
Nico?
I'm going to try to keep it relatively short. I am humbled to be on the stage with so many intelligent folks who have said some really amazing things. The three things that I have followed and that we've certainly highlighted in our episodes are the incredible momentum and traction in the M&A space in our industry. And I think it's only speeding up. It's not slowing down. It's been the hottest summer since John was working for the White House, and it has a lot of legs still. I think we're going to see many hundreds of millions of dollars invested in companies in this space through consolidation, as well as potentially others that are going public. We definitely know a few in this space that are going to try their hand at the public market. So things to watch are how Wall Street and how Sand Hill Road are treating our industry. It's a breath of fresh air for the first time in like 15 years. We're being taken seriously again, and this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity, but it comes with a warning because we've been here before, and we have to make sure that as our friends in the DOE loan office and as our friends in these investment shops are investing, that we are all conscious of the public awareness and the backlash that did in fact happen a decade ago. So I'm watching that very closely, but I'm encouraged by Aurora raising $250 million, Arcadia just last week announcing $100 million Series D. I mean, these are big numbers for our industry. Pivot being acquired. Community solar is seeing it's kind of having its heyday. It's having its time in the sun. I'm encouraged by that, and that's number two. I think that community solar, as indicated, sort of mini episodes of all of our podcasts as like the fourth vertical, is really coming into its own. Community solar in Q4 of this year and certainly going into 2022 is going to disrupt the utility sort of the market. It's taking its rightful place in the choice energy markets as aggregators like Arcadia begin to offer extremely low friction, almost no friction options for folks to buy renewable power. And then that brings me to my third, which is the democratization of not just buying power, but investing in renewables. Many of us have been a part of or watching companies like Generate, like Clean Capital, that allow folks to invest mostly through tax structures. And I just recently had Mike Silvestrini from Energia on with effectively the Fundrise for renewables, right? The ability for retail investors to invest as though it were Robinhood or a similar platform into renewable projects with the kinds of returns that just dominate, to make other IRA and other investment options look less appealing, gives further choice. So we go back to this. I think that what I'm seeing as we come round out the year is that folks are choosing renewables as their investment strategy through M&A, through community solar, and through this democratization of investment through platforms like Energy, and I'm really excited about it.
Marie.
Yeah, I can definitely echo what everybody else has shared. I think we're going to see even more and deeper state and national backings. A huge bill just passed in Illinois, another community solar bill passed in Delaware, and from that, much to the point of John, I think we're going to see a lot more clean tech jobs and job creation. Businesses are scaling. We need that. We need resources from the manufacturing side all the way to the O&M side, even of taking care of these large solar fields. And then with all of the national and state backings, I'm going to, pull from Julia, what she was saying. I think consumers are going to be looking at in deeper as completely no reliance on the grid of whole home backup or potentially off-grid resources. I think those, more and more technology is going to come up there.
Okay. A question that was spurred by both an advance send by an audience member and something that John said. Point that John made is get your reaction to the following. People can argue about whether or not Tesla is a stock whose value could pop. People can argue whether or not cryptocurrency is a bubble. But it seems, at least to me, that the shift to renewable is now baked in, that there's enough recognition across industry and government, cognoscenti, that we're frying this planet and we have no time to waste, and we cannot throw lifelines to fossil fuels. So my question for each of you is the shift to renewables baked in, or is it still to be determined? John?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I think if
You,
it wasn't,
This question is your fault, so you get to go first.
yeah, I think it's baked in. I think we saw the last 4 years in light of an administration who tried everything they could to do things like stand up coal plants. If you guys remember, DOE at one point sent a proposal to FERC that coal could have a premium on just basically to keep coal plants running, right? And it did not go through, thank God, because FERC's an independent agency. But it's not. It is baked in as much as it can be baked in. I think the reality is it's up to us as an industry to execute. But the foundation is there. State policy is coming along. Federal policy aligning. Capital is flowing in. The technology is there. We have a sophisticated workforce. Like it is the foundation, then the fundamentals are very strong. We just have to execute as an industry.
Still baked in or to be determined?
Yeah, I'll take a shot. I think that the reality is less and less about being policy driven, although I think for the near future it matters a lot. But the underlying economics of solar and soon batteries are just so compelling that they're irresistible. And so it started as a green movement, and my hat's off to all the folks who started it 10, 15, 20 years ago to save the planet. But today it's just simple business. And this is what this book I have is about. It's green is awesome. Environment is awesome, but this is a business opportunity now. And when it enters that field as it has, or it's in the early days of doing, you're going to collect epic amounts of capital and attract epic numbers of entrepreneurs and innovators to start solving some of the existing and remaining problems to a totally clean energy future.
Or to be determined? Julia?
Thanks. Sorry, you cut it out there for me for a second, but I think I heard my name. Yeah, so I will throw a little bit of doubt in that. Just last week, we had a UN report come out that said the Earth is currently on track to be 2.7 degrees Celsius warmer by the end of, I think, the century. So that's with all the upping of commitments we've seen from countries all around the world. That's with the private sector trends we're seeing. So my point is, it's just not enough. So is it a foregone conclusion? Yes, it's a question of pace and scale. So I think that to me is very much TBD. And that's why this decade really is so critical to see if we can reach that next level of acceleration here on the energy transition. And it gets more complicated too, is what I'll add. We got to think through recycling of these products at the end of their life. If we are truly going to achieve the scale we need, we have to think through holistically about what communities are getting access to the power and that it's affordable for everyone. So I think we have a lot more to do. So yes, foregone in that the technology is proven, it is there. Lots more innovation to be done on business models, nuanced policy so no one gets left behind, and future innovation so that all these pieces work together as a system.
Josh,
Can I chime in? Can I chime in a little bit, Mike?
Yeah.
The analogy that's present for me about our current situation is COVID. You see in some states where hospital workers are having to make hard decisions about who to save. And society is going to increasingly have to make this decision about entire communities because we cannot save the entire coast of planet Earth. The coast is shrinking faster than we humans can create it or stave off rising sea levels and growing storms. And this is a very, very real thing. I often try to put a positive spin on the clean energy transition, but it's both. There's going to be a lot of pain and suffering and very hard decisions made along with this economic boon. It is a huge economic opportunity. Forbes calls it $100 trillion economic opportunity. So that's another number to grab onto. Let's go.
Marie?
I mean, overall, I would say we're looking at product marketing. If you strip it down to renewable energy, this is a product that we're marketing. Right now, we're getting and rolling it out, and the early adapters are globbing on. We're getting a little bit into the mid-level adapters, and then eventually it's going to be over to the late adapters. So I do absolutely think that this is going to be where we're going to stick. And then if you also look at the Gen Zers, this is all they can talk about. This is, and they're the future. This is going to be on their radar to roll out. So we are just being the early adapters of getting this as a new normal. With all of that said, I do not think that that goes without fossil and coal kicking and screaming the entire way.
Josh?
Yeah, the train has left the station, and we are definitely moving towards this new energy economy, this renewable energy future. I don't think that it's a question of if it's happening. It's a question of if it's happening quickly enough, and the answer is no. And the reality is that when I talk to the smartest people that are 100 times smarter than me that I speak with, they've got a certain concerned look in their eyes, right? And the idea is that, hey, this is happening. There are wonderful, brilliant innovators out there, and hopefully we'll find some moonshot kind of ideas that help get us closer. I like to highlight innovators and entrepreneurs as much as possible. You'll see my backdrop at the moment is a company called Longboard Solar, and they're putting long solar panels on snow fences out through the Midwest, which I think is a really fascinating example of an entrepreneur that just comes out of the blue and does something brand new, you know, and there's dozens and dozens of these innovators out there waiting to help kind of usher the planet to this next stage. But we are going to have to be looking at adapting to climate change as well as trying to stave off, you know, the worst effects of climate change. So that's my opinion.
Nico, last trip to the ballot box is reserved for you.
I appreciate it. I'm enjoying watching Josh look up at what it must be a large screen in his office, and Bill Nussey clean his glasses to see more closely these innovations that Josh is whizzing past us here. You know, when I'll hark back to what I said earlier, and I'm obviously very bullish on this sector. I think what everyone here has said is true, and as evidence of it, you know, Tiger Global, largest hedge fund in the world, as far as I think that's right, John? They're definitely among, if not the largest hedge fund in the world. Tiger Global just invested in and led the D round of Arcadia. They also, from January to May of this year, invested in 118 startups, including Coinbase, and they are, you know, they're giving SoftBank a run for their money. SoftBank, notably, $100 billion innovation fund toward these kinds of investments. Never in my career have we seen the kind of corporate venture capital, strategic investment into the technology and the technology being mostly like really hardware and platform plays, as well as the software, things like Arcadia, that are going to facilitate, again, back to, I'll steal Kieran's word, like a zero friction economy for consumers to choose renewables. And that's what's been very difficult in the past. And I think that Josh is spot on. It's just not happening fast enough. And I'm encouraged by companies that are accelerating the technological innovation. And with Tiger Global and Drawdown Fund and Breakthrough Ventures and SoftBank committing now trillions of dollars into this sector, I don't think there's any, you know, there's no dam that can stop it. And there's no, you know, geriatric centuries old industry that can claw it back.
Consensus seems to be gathering momentum, dwindling time.
Yeah, Mike, can I just make one point? I think it's really important for you and I have talked about this in person before we all couldn't be in person. What's missing right now from our industry is the ability to punch in DC, right? We have a couple industry groups. They're trying to get their act together. They're sort of trying to conglomerate on one. We're up against, you know, well dug in, well funded the status quo. We need to get our big boy pants on and get in the room and start to push on things that we care about. And that's on all of us, right? Not just the people in DC that are representing these industry groups. We need to be putting money into them. We need to be investing in candidates. You know, it's time, you know, many shops, including ours, have limited policy shops, right? We need to be playing in those conversations if we want to get the foundation that we need to continue to scale. And right now, we're just not doing a good enough job of it.
Yeah.
And I want to add on to that. I was having a meal the other day with an elected official who's very focused on electricity in the Southeast. And he very innocently and truly, he's very interested in clean energy, but he said, you know, the utilities are just so much more well organized than the folks who want distributed generation and solar. They just seem to they have VPs are focused on this, and they have, you know, they come with agendas and information and research. And I wanted to put my hands in there and say, but this is they're fighting an industry it's just beginning, that has very little money. The profits don't exist. They're certainly not guaranteed as the utilities enjoy. And so this is, it's David versus Goliath in many ways. And Leah Stokes does a great job in her book about how those lobbying powers balance out, but also some hopeful messages, to your point, John, about what can be done if we get our act together.
I've written a lot about this on my own platforms, and having serviced many of the associations that are out there, and then a lot of companies that contribute to them. I think what's missing, John, is we have to be a different kind of disruptor. We are not innovating and coming up with companies in a new industry. We are pushing new sectors within industries with very mature incumbents. And that maturation comes with generations of executive team leadership, which have understood that you bake in public case making, elected officials, consumers, communities you want to build stuff in. You bake that into your business plan. So it doesn't matter that we're David versus Goliath. It matters whether or not David is willing to get Goliath level weaponry. And what I find in company after company is there still is a fair amount of magical thinking when it comes to public case making. People really think because we're cute chia pets, we're universally liked, we shouldn't have to work as hard to make a public case. No, in fact, we are disrupting within an existing industry, which means we have to over-invest in public case making. And I think I assert our greatest barrier here is not the budgets of our associations. It's the people who are deciding what those budgets can possibly be. So if you listen to people who are on boards of clean energy associations, you'll hear this sort of, the beatings will continue until the morale improves attitude. We're going to keep your funding low until you do better. Now, that's, you get what you pay for and you get what you invest in if you're minding the store and your spend. And there's a lot of amateur hour magical thinking that goes around in public affairs circles. Unfortunately, commercial execution, we're killing it. Brilliant people selling the hell out of stuff, developing new technologies. We are super strong as a set of sectors there, but just really, there's no getting around it. All right, let me pivot off of the world writ large and take you into your worlds. What I'd like to hear from each of you is, what has been your favorite episode and why? Tim Montague.
Oh, sure. Pick on me.
Yep.
Gosh, we had Meyer Burger on the show. John and I did a couple months ago. They have launched an ultra low carbon solar panel for the residential market initially, but this trend is so important and vital for our industry, right? We have to walk the talk, and every solar manufacturer needs to go low carbon. So that was not only my favorite episode, but my most popular episode of the Clean Power Hour.
All right, Marie, you're next. Favorite episode and why?
So we get this question all the time is what happens to damaged or decommissioned solar panels? It is by far and large the number one question. So recently we had the privilege of interviewing Cascade Eco Materials that specializes in recycling solar panels. And the episode really gets into the nitty gritty of how it works and what can be recycled and what still needs work on to get recycled. And it really gets into how the possibilities of creating a closed loop system is within our reach. So that has been my most favorite.
All right, Nico Johnson, who just hit a big episode milestone. Let's hear from you.
I was going to choose that one. My most impactful, maybe it's an easy answer, but my most impactful episode is the one that I just published. And that will be the same next Thursday, because I continue to believe that we get asked this all the time as well. I have folks that are saying, hey, what SunCast episodes should I use for my staff or for my college course? And it's really hard with 400 episodes to pick one that I think is the most impactful. The one that I'm most proud of recently is incredibly biased because I'm on the board of Energia. It's our 400th episode, and I really fundamentally believe that the work that Mike Silvestrini and Chris Sattler are doing at Energia in democratizing the way that we all can invest in renewable power on a daily basis is it's unprecedented. And I know that that's hard to wrap your head around and say, but it really is. And I'm so proud of and excited for what they're doing. And it's a shameless plug. And that's why I put it in as our 400th episode, because I knew that we would get a lot of like fanfare for hitting 400. But I just think that we just don't, as a society, and Abby says this about the Solar Plus decade, that we haven't taken the fight to the streets as an industry. It's funny that Josh Porter has got his background doing exactly what my hands were doing. We, as an industry, we just don't take the fight to the streets enough. I concur with the fact that we just don't have the lobby. Not only do we not have the lobby that we need, but the lobby that we should have is currently being sort of disrupted or broken between two entities that should be partnering. So I believe that if we can do like the kinds of things that Arcadia is doing by using smart digital consumer forward marketing to educate folks, then we are going to win the hearts and minds of not only America, but the world. And that is going to accelerate where your money and where your pocketbook is where your thoughts are, right? And that's where we have to hit, is in their pocketbook, not just saving them money, but helping them save for their future by investing in renewables at every single level. And that's why I believe that among the most important messages I've tried to get out there in the last year plus, for sure, 6 years of the podcast, is how to be a part of this. And there are ways that we can be a part of it, whether we're in the industry or whether we are on the sidelines just looking for ways to invest. So I'm really, really happy that these kinds of platforms are coming around.
Julia?
Yeah, thanks. Well, shout out for a recent episode we did on sort of the state of play in DC. I think that might be a helpful one for folks after our hiatus. In terms of most impactful, we did interviews with Saul Griffith on the electrification of everything. That was, I think, really well received and understanding where that's going. And Tony Seba separately on disruption. I guess the last thing I'll say, though, is I think truly the most impactful, maybe not even our most popular, but was an episode we did specifically looking at last April at how African-American communities are being left behind in the energy transition. So I guess I'd probably flag that. And just to echo points that were made about the industry and policy, I really want to give a shout out to all the individual members who came together to form Residential Renewables for All. It's an ad hoc coalition. To the point about capacity, it's just people taking time out of their day jobs to create a policy group. And we're advocating for 25D direct pay. So everyone may be familiar with the 25D tax credit. Direct pay exists in legislation for commercial projects and commercially owned ones, but not currently for homeowners. And it's so interesting to see how people just have to come together, and it's no big backing. It's literally just people trying to find who in the marketing team can do some tweets, who can send some press releases. And that's what it sometimes takes to get things over the line. So just maybe not the perfect way of doing something, but really, I think kudos to the 475 plus signatories on that. Folks can head to Residential Renewables for All if you want to learn more.
John, favorite episode and why?
Yeah, so I don't have a single specific episode. I think part of the Experts Only is a focus on the individual leaders themselves and their pathway or journey to getting into this. So whether it be Nancy Fund or Anna Browning from Volt Solar, or my friend Kate Brandt, like I get asked a lot from people who want to get into this industry, how do you do it? And part of the reason I started that part of the conversation for the podcast was really, you find people came into this from so many different directions and so many industries. It's not like accounting where people like, my dad was an accountant, my uncle's an accountant, I'm going to become an accountant. The clean energy has not been around that long. So people, figure out they come from the military, they come from science, they come from all these different, had worked at a nuclear sub and came up with this new cool technology for fuel cells, right? You hear these journeys of how people got into the industry. And that to me just is really empowering every time I hear from a leader, about how they got into the space. Before I hand it off, Josh, I want to point out, I keep seeing Niagara Falls in your background. Yeah, that's awesome. That's like 20 minutes from my house, halfway between where Julia grew up and where I live here in Buffalo. So super excited to see that in the background.
You get on the new electrified catamaran yet? Because that's the reason we were out there.
Oh, really? No, I've seen it though. That's awesome.
Beautiful.
That's awesome.
Nice. All right, Josh Porter, your favorite episode and why?
All right, so up on my teaser here, you can see a lot of we've been working on this film project or video series for North America Smart Energy Week. And we've probably done about 24 different shoots, remote and physical. We've been working towards higher production value content, learning about that whole world. That's been fascinating. I think that it's tough to choose, but we just talked about policy and about putting on our big boy pants was the phrase that I heard that I liked quite a bit. I have met some ballers out there, some just amazing people that are mavericks that are pushing the envelope, registered lobbyists in DC working in this space. I've met people that are commissioning research at Princeton at the Andlinger Center, and then taking that research and the results of that and digital twinning and modeling and doing brilliant stuff in that environment, and then taking that to state legislatures that are kind of behind right now, right? So I think that those people and those businesses are starting to move in that direction. That was exciting, and that made, that was what you were talking about earlier. It's one of the shoots that I'm excited about.
I'll throw in a point here, Bill, before we let you close out on that question. It seems to me that if anybody can volunteer, what's a large scale utility solar project? How much is the total cost for one of those things running right now? Anybody?
$1 billion.
$1 billion?
For a big one, yeah.
Yeah. So I want somebody in the industry who develops to tell me the business case for not spending $1 billion to build a solar power plant and not spend $100,000 building a visitor center. Why wouldn't you build a visitor center? You start it as a community relations tool. So once you build it, people can come out, school groups, senior citizens, et cetera. And then you convert it into a government relations tool. Because if you build coherence and fan base in the community, you then invite the politicians to tour, and then you become an indelible part of the constituency base. I'm asserting that a good part of our problem in renewables is if you take the map of where we're physically present in terms of economic activity, employing people, cutting checks on supply chains, and then you look at the map of our enthusiastic representation, no industry in its right mind would tolerate that gap. The gap on the maps is crazy. And there's basic stuff we can do if we had this more, if we dispense with magical thinking, understood we need to overinvest in public case making. The good news is that there is some low-hanging, low-cost fruit we could take on that would tremendously change our fortunes. And to me, it's a mystery why there just shouldn't be a de facto standard. You build, if you do a big project, you build a visitor center. But
you must be tapping my phone, Mike, because I had the same idea for Prairie Solar, which is a 1,500 acre solar farm 10 miles from my house. And it's just a golden opportunity for the residents of Illinois, for lawmakers, for business owners, for tourism. I think there's going to be a huge tourist opportunity around clean energy facilities across the board: wind,
absolutely,
solar, battery storage, carbon capture. These are unique facilities to this day, and it is an economic opportunity.
Bill, your favorite episode and why?
Well, I would just want to point out to John that I actually was born in Niagara. So I've become a Southerner ever since the last 25 years. But as my wife's relative said, when I was getting married to her, she said, "You were born a Yankee, but you were made Southern by the grace of God." So I live in between these two worlds.
I love it.
And when it comes to my favorite favorite episode, my default answer as a politician would just say the one that Mike Casey was on. But truly, the one that's most popular we've had is the recent one with Michael Liebreich. And, he's one of my favorite thinkers. I've read his stuff for years. And we did a unique format where we did this rapid fire. And then Michael, who most of you know, if not know really well, he's provocative and he's hilarious. And so he was just riffing like a comedy show on why, green hydrogen sucks or it's great and just really funny. And so we got a ton of listeners on that. Very, a lot of fun. And we'll probably use that format again, although it'd be hard to match his wit and speed.
All right, last question about you before we enter the final 10-minute stretch here. You can get anybody in the world on your show. Who would it be? Josh?
Anyone in the world on the show? Well, it's just the ones that I've been trying most recently. Vineyard Wind, the Halidex, the offshore wind programs. I'm interested in that. Plug Power. You said one. Sorry, I could list 10. Plug Power up in Alabama, New York. I'll list 2.
All right. Marie Bergquist, your dream guest and
Yeah, so my home state is Illinois. Recently, the Governor Pritzker, passed the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, which put the state on course for 100% renewables by 2050. SB 2408, if you're interested. And so, but the weeks leading up to the bill was just absolute chaos. Like, we were all on the edge of our seats. Will they or won't they pass it? The chambers, rumors of just, all out brawls in there. So I would really love, maybe not the governor, I wanted to pick somebody like super realistic to get in touch with, but talking with the lobbyists and how they're taking these bills from, just letters on a page into an actual law, and talking about what it takes to lobby those bills, and actually talking with them about these conversations that we're having about changing the minds of those in Congress. And just getting a full perspective on what it takes. So it would definitely be lobbyists. And when Julia started, it sounds like you'd be a good person to tap into as a resource for that. So,
all right, Nico, one name. Who is it?
One name. Okay, so if I can use this platform to lobby the one person that I've tried to get on the show the most or the longest that has not yet, besides Elon, of course, who has not yet said yes, and I don't presume that he's listening, but maybe one of you can help me, is John Carrington at STEM, please. I would like to get the guy who was CEO of First Solar and is now the CEO of STEM, who took it public in a SPAC, and who is has the inside vision or sort of view of the driver's seat view of how this industry has gotten where it's going and how it's going to get or how it's got where it is and how it's going to get where it's going. I just think that he has such a unique perspective on how to commercialize technology that a decade or two before was considered to be uncommercializable, right? So John Carrington, if you're listening, please.
All right, John Powers.
Nico, I can help you with that when I get John on and talk to his comms team. So let's talk about that. It's a great question. I have my 100th episode coming up next. And so I had some of these invites out to folks that I really wanted to go on. I really love Secretary Granholm and her role right now driving the Department of Energy going forward, not as a scientist, but as a governor who focused on jobs and manufacturing I think is so critical to the point of where our industry is today. So I think getting her on, and then my just I'm going to say two, because we focus on finance, but the CEO of BlackRock, his letter years ago just triggered ESG investing in a way that.
Amen.
So having a conversation with him, I think, would be fascinating. Now, I'm not saying they're doing everything right at BlackRock, but his letter, Larry Fink's letter, was just monumental.
Good. All right, Julie Piper.
Keying off of that, actually, I'd want to have Mark Carney on. He's the former governor of the Bank of England. He's a UN climate envoy. He's actually the head of transition investing at Brookfield Asset Managers now. He would, I think, have the frontline view on how exactly we are going to mobilize the 50 trillion, 100 trillion, whatever the latest assessment is, what we need to move in capital to accelerate the energy transition.
Tim Montague.
Well, I got a doozy for you. I want to have Henrik Steezdahl on my show. He is the inventor. He's a Danish inventor of the modern wind turbine. But this dude is a beast. He didn't stop with wind, which he sold to Siemens, okay? Literally the modern wind turbine that we are all seeing across the country and now going into deep water across the world. But he also now has a thermal medium length storage. So this is a days to weeks long storage device, which at its core is just hot air and rocks and steel containers. And the dude is just amazing. So please, Henrik, let's talk.
I love it.
Bill, did I ask you your favorite guest? All right.
No, you didn't, but mine's the same as John's, which is Jennifer Granholm. And I've been a fan, but her recent announcement of the DOE's LEAP program, it was all about local energy. And that's the term. It's 350 times in my book. But it's entirely about how you can build these small scale systems and with the dramatic impact it has on communities, not to mention the environment. So she really leapt to the top of my list when she made that term local energy. She raised it to such a high level and made it a center part of the an important program.
So we stay within the hour. I'm going to pack the last two questions into one question. All right. So the one trend that you're spotting that you don't think anybody else is seeing coming. The second is, what is one tip for clean techers to pitch you on topics, trends, or people for your show? So the hidden trend nobody's seeing, and a pro tip for pitching you to get on your show. All right, Josh Porter.
Hidden trend nobody's seeing. I don't know. How about the hidden trend that I want to see, which is space-based solar? Let's do that. I think we need some big thinking. I think we need some grand ideas, something really kind of, I think we were big thinkers in the beginning, right? And things are happening now. Now we're getting more established. Let's get some huge ideas out there. Let's put space-based solar in. What was the second question?
Well, you kind of answered it. What's the pro tip for pitching Josh Porter for getting on a show? But you basically said, be a space cadet.
I love it. Do it. That'll do.
All right. Gotcha. Nico Johnson, the trend nobody's seeing that you think is going to be important in the future, and what's the pro tip for pitching Nico Johnson to get on SunCast?
Yeah, so it always surprises me how in a world where we believe that microgrids and resiliency are important and storage is going to rule the day and solar is going to power storage as well as hydrogen, the words transactive energy have somehow fallen off the map, even in a time in an era that has never existed before this, where blockchain has legitimately changed the way finance is working. It has legitimately changed the way smart contracts are happening. And I think that transactive energy is a trend that most people are sleeping on, and that blockchain will revolutionize. And it is in fact happening right now. I think that it's going to happen in choice markets in the US faster than anybody believes is capable of happening. And if you want to get on SunCast, you should probably contact Mike Casey at Tigercomm or Peter Kelly at Renewcom. They both seem to have a knack for getting their clients onto the show. But in short, I mentioned it last time and I'll mention it again. Email me if you want a simple one-pager to outline why we should care about your message. And don't send us your press release. Send us a much shorter version that suggests how it's going to matter to our audience. If you don't understand our audience, then you don't understand how to pitch us.
All right, Julia, the trend nobody's seeing and the pro tip for pitching Julia Piper.
Yeah, I mean, this trend, I'm curious what John will make of it, but I think the domestic manufacturing is a trend I'm seeing start to take off. I'm not sure how the pieces will come together. We're seeing legislation, we're seeing calls for it. We need an on-ramp, I think, before maybe mandates get put in place, but I think that's an exciting trend. There was just an announcement with Redwood Materials and Ford on recycling battery products and doing that, I think, in California to start. So seeing more happen in clean tech here in America will be really interesting, and how that evolves, I would watch. In terms of pitching, you can always reach us at Poli, _climate on Twitter, and just DM us if you have a pitch there, or politicalclimatepodcast@gmail.com. You can pitch us there as well. Would love to hear from folks who want to talk about policy.
All right, John Powers, you're the master of saying two things in one. You get one trend nobody's seeing that you think is going to be important, and one pro tip.
Yeah. The one trend I'm seeing a lot right now in the market that I think is actually scaring me a little bit is there's a lot of stupid money coming into the market. So there's a lot of money bidding really big on projects, but then they can't execute. And what that's doing is it's getting the hope of developers and asset developers to think that's what the value of their projects are. But then those folks, again, going back to things like not understanding what net metering is. It's going to crush the ability to close those projects. So, smart money is really important right now to get these things done. And then you can always reach out to us through podcast at cleancapital.com. But I love when people tag me on Twitter and say, hey, you need to be interviewing this person. I usually jump right at that. I think that's a really fun way to engage and learn more. So, feel free to reach out, and we're always looking for interesting ideas in the intersection of energy, innovation, and finance. Mike, thanks so much for putting this together.
Our pleasure. Mr. Nelsey.
I'm also entering my foray into the background thing. I've got Thomas Edison here, and he's it's kind of creepy. If that was a competition for backgrounds, it's kind of creepy as opposed to most creative. But the reason he's here and the reason he's always standing over me is that I think the biggest thing that people don't appreciate is that this industry is about to get incredibly innovative. And in this book, I talk about how when Edison and Tesla and Westinghouse were creating this industry, it was nothing but innovation. It was grand, gigantic ideas and billion-dollar visions, and it changed the world. And so much of that, nearly all of that, has been entirely lost. And I think what happens is we move towards these smaller scale systems, we can actually have competition. We can actually unleash that innovation. So to me, in the coming months and year or two, we're going to see a revolution in innovation. That doesn't mean a shiny office building that a utility has and it's their innovation hub. I'm not talking about that innovation theater. I mean, real innovation. And I think it's coming fast. And if you want to you have a story you want to tell us about and have it be on our podcast, actually understand that's what we talk about. Nico said it last time we did all this as a group, and we talk about local energy. We don't talk about things that are giant utility scale. We don't talk about things that are heavy duty Washington-based policy. There are people much smarter than us doing podcasts on that. But if you want to talk about innovation, you want to talk about small scale systems, we would love to hear your story. And you just go to the Freeing Energy website, and there's a place to put it there.
Tim Montague.
Well, I got a riff on Marie's several highlights of SB 2408, the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act here in Illinois. There's a bill inside that bill called the coal to solar transition. And we are literally going to shutter about 10 coal-fired burning power plants in Illinois and convert them to solar farms and battery farms. And that is a wonderful good, because there's already huge infrastructure there, right? Ginormous substations and wires. And we're going to clean the grid and shut those babies down. As far as getting on my show, it's really hard. You have to pick up the phone.
Got it. All right, Marie, last word on this. And we have an audience question that's not gotten in. We'll see if we can't get to that real quick. Marie?
Yeah, I want to echo what everybody else said. I know that, crypto, blockchain, that is definitely something that people aren't putting as much thought into, maybe not as much on my radar. And then domestic manufacturing as well is a big deal. Another thing, as far as getting on the show, really think about what you're trying to accomplish. If you're just looking for brand awareness, that's okay. It's okay. Ask us for a commercial spot or a slot. But if you have a story to tell, you are more than welcome to reach out to us across all social media at GRNE Solar or our website, grnesolar.com/WhatsApp.
Actually, Elizabeth Colross, thank you so much for that question. We got a couple of the podcasters that have to bail out. We're going to post your question and ask one of the podcasters to respond to you. If you would send me on LinkedIn your contact info, I'll make sure the podcasters get it. I want to thank everybody for joining us in the listening audience. I want to thank the podcasters joining us. This was an awesome discussion, folks. I don't know if you're up for episode 3, but I keep hearing how much they like hearing from me. So I know you don't have a problem talking, and but if that'd be good, you let me know. We'll get this organized in another quarter. All right. Well,
Thanks,
hey,
Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
I want to
Yeah,
thank so
great to
much
see all of
everybody
you.
for joining. You take care. Bye now.
Thanks.
Thanks for everyone who joined us live.